My name is John Castor, MD, University of Maryland School of Medicine, where I'm a professor of medicine, and my specialty is cardiology. Well, the research that I did on this subject was done about 10 years ago, so let me comment on how things were then. Many medical centers have a vice president for health affairs or a chancellor. They have different titles. And the dean and the head of the hospital, if the hospital is owned by the school, report to this person. And it's a decent arrangement, but it's not universal. In fact, it's relatively uncommon. Many medical campuses have more than just a medical school and a teaching hospital there, nursing school, others, veterinary medicine, or whatever. And so there often is a person called the vice president for health affairs, a title of this sort, to whom the deans of each of these different schools will report. And then that person usually reports up to the university. Now, whether or not the teaching hospital is a part of this arrangement depends upon its governance. Most medical school teaching hospitals are not owned by their medical schools. Some are, and then you can have this combined arrangement, but it isn't the rule throughout the country. I decided to study the new institute system at the Cleveland Clinic, and then wrote two papers at the request of the editor, one of which favored the institute system and one that said the institute system wasn't so widely applicable at most medical schools. I'll briefly summarize what the institute system is, because that's the way the Cleveland Clinic operates now. Rather than having a cardiology division and a cardiac surgical division, for example, there's one institute of cardiovascular diseases. And the members of the institute are the cardiologists, the cardiac surgeons, the vascular surgeons, and the vascular internists, and they're all together administratively. And this has been applied for many of the subspecialties at the clinic. And it seems to be working very effectively for them, and it's basically a good idea, I think. However, applying this system at most medical schools will be very difficult because the people who run the different divisions and departments may not be so willing to give up their authority to an institute director. And the schools have to have a very strong leader who can force this sort of thing through, because it's not going to be something that's going to be accepted broadly, I think. Now, this is all speculation, because the institute system has not been widely applied as far as I know. At the Cleveland Clinic, which invented it, it's apparently been a very favorable thing. Well, the Cleveland Clinic is a wonderful place, but it's quite different from the average university hospital. It is primarily an institution that delivers quality care, excellent care. Research and teaching, though they do it, is not their primary mission. And this has been the case since their founding. The Cleveland Clinic was founded in the 1920s. And they have a medical school now, which they just formed within the last 10 years and shows great promise. But nevertheless, the Cleveland Clinic has distinctive features that are different from most academic medical centers. The governance is an important feature of this. There's a CEO who's in charge of the whole place, the group practice, which is the basic center of the Cleveland Clinic's operation, its hospitals and its clinics, and of course the dean of the medical school that they've just created reports to him. He's a very powerful figure. He reports to the board of trustees of the Cleveland Clinic. Most medical schools don't have this kind of direct authority organized in this manner, and so we have to take places like the Cleveland Clinic as wonderful places, but distinctively different from the average academic medical center. As a result of my studies, I came to the conclusion that the best arrangement, the most ideal arrangement, is for one person to be the dean of the medical school and the CEO of the health system, including the teaching hospital. This is not common, but it is present, for example, at Johns Hopkins and at the University of Pennsylvania, which were two institutions that I wrote a book about. Then these people in these senior positions report up to the university or to the board of directors, depending upon the arrangement. And then one person can coordinate the school and the medical system. Now, this is not applicable very broadly. For example, here at the University of Maryland, where I work, we are a state medical school, and the teaching hospital is an independent, voluntary, not-for-profit organization with its own board of trustees, and there is no direct governance relationship between the two, except that certain people sit on different boards ex officio. And that's a relatively common arrangement for a variety of reasons, particularly with the state medical schools, of which, as you know, there are many. Well, the general arrangement is that the clinical faculty work for the School of Medicine, and that's who pays their bills, pays their salaries rather, and their promotions and titles and so forth are arranged through the school, of whom the dean is the top person. The doctors may then practice their clinical work at the university hospital, which is separately governed, let us say, but they look to the dean as being their boss. Now, to some extent, because there's an overlap in function between the work of the hospital and the dean's office, the CEO and the other officers of the hospital can have influence, distinct influence, on who is hired as a faculty member on the clinical side and who's not hired. And that sometimes leads to a little bit of difficulty, but usually the hospital folks and the dean's office can come together and satisfy themselves as to who is being hired. I don't think that this combination of the dean CEO business has spread that widely yet or has changed that much in recent years. But a faculty member who has administrative responsibilities at the hospital and in a sense has to answer to the CEO of the hospital. For example, I was chairman of the Department of Medicine in the School of Medicine here at Maryland, and I was also chief of the medical service at the university hospital. And in a sense, I worked for both the dean of the school and the head of the hospital. But it was the dean who was the primary employer, and the hospital people obviously can have a role in what a faculty member may do on the clinical side, but most of us, I think, look to the dean as being our boss.